Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. I do want to get to a very interesting story that developed over the last probably 12 or so hours with the Kentucky Wildcats. And what I would say about this story, let me just even start by saying this. Sometimes in life, it's better to be lucky than good. You hear that all the time, but in this case, in my opinion, with what happened today, I think it's better sometimes to be lucky than good. Let me explain why. So there's a player in the state of Kentucky named Trent Noah. For the millionth time, I'll probably call him Trevor Noah at some point. Forgive me, okay? 6'6" guard, second best high school player in the state of Kentucky, and really in a different era at a different time, probably would have played for Kentucky. But obviously he was a senior this year. John Calipari's the head coach. We know how he recruits, and he was a guy that was never really seriously considered for Kentucky. And so I bring it up because he was committed to South Carolina, but over the last couple days, you start to hear that maybe something might be going on. Well, on Tuesday afternoon, he asked out of his letter of intent. And let me tell you, and I'm going to explain why it's better to be lucky than good, but I believe he's going to be a Kentucky Wildcat. And so a couple things. Why do I say it's better to be lucky than good? Well, it's because really, I'll be honest. I'm not a high school recruiting expert. I don't know a ton. Let me take that back. I didn't know a ton about him as recently as about 2 weeks ago. But about 2 weeks ago, when the Calipari news happens at Kentucky, he's leaving to go to Arkansas when Mark Pope comes in. Called a buddy of mine that covers Kentucky. None of the KSR guys, by the way, I worked with all of them. I love Jack Pilgrim, love Nick Roush. It wasn't one of them, just so we're clear, okay? But somebody that was around the team, and I was really actually calling to kind of ask, hey, tell me a little bit about DJ Wagner. Tell me a little bit about Adu Thiero. Tell me a little bit about Big Z, some of the guys you thought maybe were going to transfer. But I bring it up because in the course of the conversation, you start to talk, you start to ask questions, you start to kind of just go back and forth. And it's all the normal questions that you would think about when it comes to a new coach, new roster, huge brand in Kentucky. And so I bring it up because in the conversation, one of the things we talked about was how we think Mark Pope's going to build the team. And I know I said 2 weeks ago, maybe it was like 10 days ago, because there was already a couple commitments, Amari Williams, Lamont Butler. And we're talking about how, wow, they're going to be so much older. And I said, but you know what? You got to replace all those guys next year. And so my buddy was on the other line. He says, dude, Torres, it's tough because, I think if Mark could do it in a perfect world, he would want a couple high school players in this class that he could potentially develop. The problem is all the good high school players are not available. They've all signed letters of intent. And he specifically brought up Trent Noah. He said, man, oh man, Torres. He goes, this kid would be perfect for this new era of Kentucky. And I'm pretty sure that if he hadn't already signed a letter of intent, he would probably want to go to Kentucky and play for this coaching staff. And so we talked about it a little bit, and, we kind of joked, hey, in the portal world, you could, if it doesn't go well for a year, even if it does go well for a year, if you want to be at Kentucky, you can get in the portal this time next year. You can be a Kentucky Wildcat. But apparently it's not going to take that long because, again, he asked out of his letter of intent. And to South Carolina's credit, they decided to do it. So he asked out of his letter of intent. Now, this is the important part, okay? This is the important part, is that in the statement, he said when he asked out of the letter of intent, he basically said point blank, end of story. He's like, I want to be closer to home, okay? And I found that very interesting because, one, it jives with what my buddy told me, is that basically, he would want to play for Kentucky, but he wasn't going to Kentucky. But now he's out of his letter of intent, and I think this is only a matter of time before it happens. Now, I don't think it happens overnight. You certainly don't want – I don't think, to his credit, I don't think Mark Pope was tampering or anything, but you certainly don't want it to appear as though if this kid decommits and commits tomorrow, then it's going to look not good for anybody involved. South Carolina's in the SEC, not the best look, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I think it might take 3 or 4 days, but I think ultimately He wants to be a Kentucky Wildcat. I kind of think he's the perfect fit for what Mark Pope is trying to do. So the question becomes, why do I say that Mark Pope, he's the perfect guy for what Mark Pope is trying to do? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Is that, first of all, Mark Pope, there's a couple things. One, we talked about it on the day that Kerr Kriisa, and who was the other guy that committed on that same day? It was Kerr Kriisa and Kobe Brea. When they both committed, what did I say at the time? I said, that's 8-9 scholarship players. Most of them are going to want to play next year. And so I said, unless Jackson Robinson becomes available, I don't think that realistically you're signing any more super marquee players. But you're at 9 scholarships. And what you do want to do is, what did we just say with Arkansas? You want to get to at least 10, probably 11, maybe even 12, so you can have full practices. So if guys get hurt, injuries are going to happen, whatever. The problem is, when you have all these veteran guys, when you have all these guys who know their roles and are going to want to play, it makes it really tough to convince other transfers to come in, other veterans to come in. And so what you need is a couple building blocks. Well, here's the great thing about Trent Noah. He's the exact player that fits that bill. One, the positive is, he's good enough to play at this level. You know how I know? Because he decommitted from South Carolina, okay? It's not like he was a high school player, decommitted from, Missouri State or Abilene Christian. No, he was going to play in the SEC. But number 2 player in the state of Kentucky, outside of Travis Perry, he was the best player in the state, one of the best players in recent memory. Didn't realize he's actually the 5th leading scorer in the history of Kentucky high school basketball. But you bring him in, probably don't play him a ton next year, but I could see him having a role where he plays 8 to 12 minutes in that backcourt, where he's a backup to the Otega Owas, to the other wing guys, Kobe Brea, whatever. And as he gets more confident, as he gets more comfortable, maybe a little bit of a bigger role next year. And then guess what? This time next year, you have to replace a lot. As I said, I think they have 4 or 5 fifth-year seniors right now. I don't have the full roster right in front of me, but Amari Williams is going to be a 5th-year guy. Lamont Butler is going to be a 5th-year guy. Kobe Brea is a 5th-year guy. Kerr Kriisa is a 5th-year guy. So that's 4 right there off the top of my head. So this kid plays 8, 10, 12 minutes, whatever it is. And then here's the good news. He gets a year of experience, a year of practice, a year of development. And by year 2, he can be a contributor. And by year 3, he could potentially be a star. And so this has worked out so perfectly for Kentucky, assuming it is Kentucky. Maybe it's someone else. Maybe it's Louisville. Maybe it's someone closer to home. I think this is a Kentucky, like, it's not official, but it's official. It's like when the girl's like winking at you across the bar, or, let's keep it PC here. If the guy's winking at the girl across the bar, and it's like, it's not done, but if you walk over, you talk and don't screw it up, you feel like you're in pretty good shape. That's how I feel like Mark Pope feels right now. Okay. Sees the pretty girl smiling at him across the bar. Don't say something dumb. Don't have food in your teeth, and you're probably pretty good to go. And so this is the perfect piece for that reason. On top of that, this is what you've wanted, Kentucky fans. Listen, I've been covering Kentucky since the first year of the Calipari era. That was the first year I was out of school doing anything in the media field. And I only bring it up to very simply say that since I've been covering Kentucky, you know what the 2 biggest complaints are? Even when Cal was winning, it was, why aren't we recruiting more Kentucky kids? There are guys that will stay here and are willing to contribute and not be stars. And outside of Derek Willis, who, by the way, random fact, I was at Derek Willis's commitment ceremony with Matt Jones about 15 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever it was. Dominique Hawkins, 1 or 2 others. There weren't a lot of guys that ended up staying. That was, shame on Cal. And then 2, what was the other thing? Get players that can develop within the program. Well, guess what this kid is? A guy that can develop within the program. And because he's a Kentucky guy, as long as you lay out a path for him, as long as you explain to him, hey, it's not going to be all, peaches and cream in year 1, but by year 2, year 3, you can be a star in this system. I don't know how he says no. So we'll see what the time frame is. We will see, everything that happens going forward. But I feel like this is a gift from the heavens. As I said, my buddy who covers the team said he wants to be there. Trent Noah wants to be a Kentucky Wildcat, and in a different world, he probably would have been. But This works out better. You feel bad for South Carolina, but this is the new world. And I'll say this is that I know there's a lot of talk right now about, commitment and this and that. Like, but if South Carolina, if there was a star player from South Carolina that South Carolina's coaching staff didn't want, and he committed to Tennessee or Kentucky, and then a new coaching staff came in and he had the chance to play for the home state school under the new staff, I think most people get that, like, this is sort of an extenuating circumstance and it makes sense. And so you feel bad for South Carolina, but I think this is a great piece of news for Kentucky. And I think he is going to be just a really, really good piece for them if and when it happens. And by the way, if and when it happens, we will go ahead and cover it.